welcome back to Marketing Mondays with Itanian Company Marketing Consultants. So I recently jumped on the podcast bandwagon at the advice of a friend. Very late, I know. And my favorite podcast has become On Brand with Nick Westergaard for very obvious reasons. He recently had a guest on his show named Tamsin Webster, who is a marketing professor, and she said something that really just struck me. She was talking about the way brands present themselves and the stories they tell about themselves. And she said, the problem with a story that is complete is that the audience plays no role in it. What she means here is that if you are set on what your brand means and you're not at all evolving or changing based on what it means to your consumers, then they feel alienated and they feel unimportant when it comes to your brand story. But then I thought about this and I thought, I don't actually know very many brands that co-create. And that's what that's called. And when a brand and a consumer work together, officially or unofficially, to create this brand that both sides love and cherish. Now, co-creation sounds like it has to be something super formal, where you have a workshop and people come in, and some companies actually do that, where they have consumers come in to help them create new products or help them evolve in different ways. But it doesn't have to be that formal. Co-creation can be as simple as listening to your consumers' feedback or observing how they actually interact with your brand, your products, and your services. Now, you can create this list of describers or adjectives or this vision that you have for your brand, and you can say, this is what my brand stands for. But that's not always how consumers perceive it. And the disconnect can happen in two ways. So, if you create this brand image and present it to the world, and consumers buy into it, but then aren't actually satisfied with your product or service, there's work that needs to be done, but not on the brand strategy side. Your brand strategy doesn't need to shift. What you need to do is to improve your product or service to meet the expectations that you had already set out. The second disconnect happens when you create this brand around your product or services. Consumers come, they try your products or services, they're satisfied, they love it, but for reasons other than what you expected or what you presented. So they're using or they're viewing your brand in a totally different way. And that's when a shift in brand strategy might be necessary. So a good example of that is Taco Bell. Now, if you say the word Taco Bell or the name Taco Bell to the average person and ask them if they associate the word fresh to Taco Bell, you'll get a pretty confused response. The tacos and the grilled meats and the dripping cheeses and that doesn't exude freshness related to that brand. But that's exactly what the company went for in the 1970s in their advertising campaigns. They were pushing freshness. And if you go to our blog at itaniancompany.com/blog, you'll see some advertisements that I've posted there from Taco Bell in the 1970s. They were quick to realize that people weren't coming to Taco Bell for fresh food. They were coming to Taco Bell because it was cheap and they wanted value for money. People want to, there's one advertisement that they quickly moved to when they shifted the focus from freshness to value. They created an advertisement in which a father was saying, I can feed my entire family for $5.50 or under $6 or something like that. Value quickly became their main focal point rather than freshness, because people weren't going there for freshness. And that's how they evolved and they shifted based on observing and listening to their consumers. Going beyond that, Taco Bell also realized that Taco Bell is probably the kind of food that you eat after a night out or when you really want to indulge and you're not very proud of. It's just a junky thing that hits the spot when you need it to. And so they created a series of campaigns around that concept as well. And one was in 2013 called the Viva Young campaign that was launched in the Super Bowl. And that was a fantastic campaign that showed old senior citizens who were going out for a night on the town and came at the end of the night, they decided to hit up a Taco Bell. So no matter who you are, Taco Bell always hits the spot at the end of a night out. That is a real example of how a brand is not ashamed to say, you know what, I'm going to own up to why people are loving me. I may have had this original idea in my head of how my brand should be perceived. But if that's not how it's being perceived and people are happy, why fight that? Just go with it. If you can make a real campaign out of it, if you can evolve your brand image to match that, go with it. So why co-create? What did Taco Bell benefit from this evolution? Well, consumers that feel that they're being listened to, or that feel that they have some sort of influence on a brand, will have more affinity, and they can become what's called a brand advocate. Now, brand advocate is someone who feels emotionally invested in your brand and really believes in it and takes it upon themselves for no reason to promote you, just because they love what you're doing. And a brand advocate's word of mouth is more valuable than any mass media campaign that you can launch with, no matter your budget. So the most important thing to get started with co-creation is to listen, is to take feedback on board. And don't be afraid to evolve, don't be afraid to change. You may have had an image in your head of what your brand should stand for, but you can't define what the customer experience is. And if they're having a positive customer experience in a way you didn't expect, use that to your benefit. If they're having a negative customer experience, that's also something to take into consideration as well. You cannot define how people perceive you. You can influence it, you can set up the infrastructure, but in the end, it's absolutely important to see your brand from their eyes and to evolve and change and adapt to that. So thanks for joining us for this week's episode, and I'll see you next week. If you want to read more about this topic and see some local examples I've included, head to titaniaandcompany.com/blog, where you can read more.